Hey guys, it's Stephen here, back with another video and a slightly delayed 5 things that we learned after City's 1-0 defeat to Crystal Palace at Wembley on Saturday. I was going to do the video yesterday, but family life got in the way, and I probably needed a little bit more time to stew on that game anyway. Honestly, I've calmed down a fair bit since then. Life has forced me to anyway. And my reaction to the game is one more of disappointment as opposed to, anger or anything like that. I think City were essentially just not good enough is the broader conclusion, which I'll dive into today in sort of little chunky segments as always in the 5 Things Learned video. But I've calmed down a little bit because ultimately I don't really think City are good enough to necessarily win that game. We are good enough to win that game, but you know what I mean? There was no guarantee, and we were always susceptible to a performance like that against a team who wanted it more because we don't necessarily have all the answers right now. So I'm reasonably calm because I think it was sort of symptomatic of all the things that we know this season. It doesn't make it excusable. It doesn't make it good enough for any of those things, but I can't say I'm going to sort of cry over it because I expected it, really. If I took a step back, a small part of me, even though I predicted a win, was probably thinking Palace are probably going to do us here because it's that kind of season, the curse season, and that's how the game played out in the end. Having said that, I think there's still plenty of lessons to learn from it, and 5 things that I took from it I'm going to go through today. Give the video a like and subscribe if you are new to the channel. It does help support me over here creating Manchester City content every day for don't know how many years now, several years at very least. I think I started doing City content like 10 years ago, if I'm being honest, something like that. So if you want to help the channel continue to grow, please give the video a like, please get involved in the comments, and please subscribe to the channel if you are new. All the links, of course, are down below on the YouTube video. Let's talk about the first thing that I want to talk about from this game in particular. Don't forget there is a match reaction immediately after, which is a little bit more raw and so on. That's on the channel if you want a broader strokes to the game. But for me, I want to talk about this first. Sideways with the wrong players. Look, we still created chances in this game, and we still probably should have scored and probably end up winning. But the one thing that struck me recently is that we've gone back. Well, not gone back, we've always done this, but we've gone, reverted to Akanji's back in the side, Diaz is back in the side, and it's so frustrating watching Manchester City bore. We are quite boring to watch right now. It feels like for long spells of the game, and 81% possession suggests it really is a long spell of the game. We're passing side to side to side to side with players who aren't really capable of doing much with the ball when we do that. If we're going to do this, if we're going to pass side to side to side, we're going to need players, with all due respect, better on the ball than this man alongside me and people like Ruben Diaz. And even to an extent, Josko, because Josko isn't really going to cross it in. It felt like most of the game, it was Josko Vardiol to Diaz to Akanji. And Akanji was often sort of on the right side of their defensive box, threatening to overlap, but he was never going to cross the ball because he can't cross the ball. And he was passing it back to Diaz, who was never going to do anything other than look to his left or right because he hasn't got the ability to dink it over or play through balls between the lines. And then he was going to give it to Vardiol, who was instinctively going to pass it to Doku or back to Diaz anyway. And the issue we've got is we've got a lot of players who are very predictable to do against banks of 10 defenders, And when you've got that in front of you, you need ingenuity. Now, I know Laporte and Cancelo weren't treble winners and so on, and I respect, the players that achieved this. Akanji and Diaz were a big part of that, and they're great players. But I don't think right now they're the most suitable for how we play. When you used to have people like Laporte, for example, or even Cancelo would be in that role, an insanely creative player with his flaws, absolutely, and he's moved on for a reason. I'm not saying we get him back, but what I'm saying is we have players like that who could unlock a defence with their individual quality, and Laporte, a much better passer, than people like Akanji and Diaz. We're going to need people who can do that because we can't just keep relying on people like Akanji and Diaz. And I think maybe in previous years the difference might have been that even if Akanji and Diaz were doing that, we had peak David Silva. Oh, not David Silva. Peak Bernardo Silva, Gundogan, De Bruyne, Mahrez. People like that with a lot more creativity. De Bruyne is obviously still a really good player, but he's not peak De Bruyne, who would put it in the top corner from 20 yards or whip 20 amazing crosses in per game. You get 1 or 2 great crosses from De Bruyne now, but not like that many that it would unsettle a defence. And I think that's where we're going wrong. We're giving it to players who... Savinho is a young lad whose confidence is not that great, so he goes to him, he doesn't really do much of it. Doku, well, there's a different discussion entirely, but it's going to basically Savinho and Doku. And it's not really going to anyone else. De Bruyne drops deep a little bit, but his crosses keep hitting the first man. Bernardo Silva creatively doesn't offer anything these days. I love Bernardo Silva, but creatively, that spark seems to have fizzled out. then who else really was there? We had people like Marmoush, Haaland, waiting for the ball, and they weren't going to get it. So essentially, if City got to keep doing this sideways thing, look, I've said this before against Arsenal when they had 10 men ages ago, and we were camped inside their half early on in the season. I remember thinking, why is it Diaz and Akanji doing all the passing? It might have been Diaz and Akanji, I can't remember who it was, but it was like Diaz doing all the passing. Why not let just like, if they're going to sit back and deep, why not just let like Diaz and Akanji go into the area and let like our midfielders do that instead and cross it to the 6'5" guys, 6'4" guys? I never got the logic of that. Like, I would much rather Akanji actually drift into the area and be there for crosses than be the one, because look, keep people like, I don't know, your fast-paced people like if you're gonna have people like Nunez on the pitch, if he's gonna be there, or Nico Riley, let those guys cross it instead. People can actually cross the ball, you know. I don't know, that's a very rough idea, but you know what I'm getting at. Like, we've got the guys who can't do anything. At least have them in the area to win a header, you know, as opposed to passing up. We've got an issue there. We need to be better at it. That's things that stuck out with me, and we've gone back to that very boring side-to-side things with the wrong players who can't do it. Which leads me on to the second point. I feel a bit harsh putting Savinho there, but, you know, I think he's sort of symptomatic of where we're at right now. I actually think Savinho's going to be a really good player. I really do believe that. And some people scoff at that, but I don't have a short memory. I'm very capable of remembering the Savinho at the start of the season looking great, and even Riyad Mahrez, you know, tweeting like, "Oh, I've got a little clone here," and all that kind of stuff. I can't remember what he said, but that was the implication. And Savinho looking great and running at people with confidence and getting good crosses in and assists and full of life. Savinho right now really can't hit a barn door. You know, he can't put a cross in. He can't beat his man. His confidence is dipped. And Doku on the other side, I like Doku, but I still maintain Doku is a really good player, but I don't think he's a great a killer. You know, I think he's an incredible dribbler, but he's not an incredible passer or an incredible finisher. In fact, he's a pretty average finisher, and he is. I mean, he might be a decent finisher, but he rarely shoots. So ultimately, it's the same end result. It doesn't matter if he can finish 1-on-1 or not, if he doesn't really get a chance to shoot or whatever. Like, and I know it's hard with banks of 10 defenders and blah blah blah, etc. But I can't help but feel, you know, Leroy Sané or Sterling in the past, or Mahrez, they'd cut in and get a shot anyway, and probably score a lot, because that's what they do, and they're good at getting to the back post of movement. Savinho and Doku aren't. And the quality bit as well is, once again, I think these players have just dipped. I think De Bruyne has dipped. I think, you know, Doku and Savinho are talents, but they're not elite level yet. They're not the top class wingers, you know. You look at the quality you've got out wide, you know, in other players. Goal scorers like Liverpool have Salah out wide, and I know they don't have a striker, and I know he drifts inside, but that's the comparison. You look at, you know, Rodrigo linked, he's more of a goal scorer, and I know it'd be difficult against 10 people, but he is more of a goal scorer. I don't think we have great goal scorers out wide, and I don't think we have real elite level quality out wide yet. It could be in time, but I don't think they're there. And I don't think we have it in midfield anymore. I don't think De Bruyne is elite level anymore, personally. I think he's a very good midfielder still, but he's very sloppy, gives the ball away a lot, and he can't quite cross to the same level. Even though he still made some more big chances, he absolutely did. But he's dipped a bit, is what I'm saying. Foden's dipped an awful lot. Rodri's not there. Bernardo Silva is not the same as he used to be. Gundogan's not the same as he used to be. Our defenders aren't the same as they used to be. Akanji, Diaz, they seem to have dipped, you know? And creatively and technically across the pitch, we just lack quality. And I think we lack killers as well. Like, I'm so disappointed in, you know, Haaland in that game, refusing the penalty. I'm so disappointed, you know, watching City waste chances when it mattered in previous years. I'm not going to dig out some of these guys because they're young, you know, like, and big chances fell to Echeverri, Nico Riley. They're young lads. And they'll be great footballers, I'm sure. But they aren't real quality right now. They are still talents and prospects. And that killer mentality comes with experience, really, you know. Like, Rodri wasn't a killer 4 years ago when he signed, but he became one, you know. And you do learn that to an extent. And I do think they're very good players, some of these lads, but they're not really the finished product yet. And the players that we've signed, like, they're young and they're not playing much. Look, we do lack just world-class players, and I do think there's an element of Rodri will elevate them, and I'm sure the summer signings will be useful. The links to Reinders and Wirtz and so on, and I think the step in the right direction. And you can even laugh at Morgan Gibbs White, but that guy is mentally fantastic. You know, he's an aggressive winner, and I think we need a little bit more of that, because I watched too many players be passive at the cup final. Too many players who wanted to, you know, give it to someone else and let them do. Not that they didn't want to do it, but they just don't know how to do it. and they're very subservient to the system. And I think the brilliance of the Guardiola sides at the best is that they are structured, organised and fantastic and well trained and drilled. But they're also blessed with mesmeric individual quality. Like, as much as you put a system in and tell them what to do, you ultimately, if you give the ball to Messi and he does his thing, Messi goes, brr, scores. If you give the ball to De Bruyne and he does his thing, a great cross or assist, and scores. Phil Foden last season, just give the ball to him and he scores in the top corner. David Silva, Sterling at his best, Mahrez, Sane, Aguero. Ultimately, all the systems don't matter when you got players of that quality, because they're going to score anyway. And that's the thing, is City had the chances. We had the chances in that game. We did. But the quality wasn't there. And the thing is, I was reading this the other day about, big teams, they score low quality chances, low XG chances, because they're better players. Most goals at the top level in big games are actually usually pretty good goals, unless they're scrappy ones with a mistake. But they're usually pretty good goals. Think of all the great goals over the years, City have scored. The Aguero goal, 93-20, that's a high quality goal where he beats his man and puts it in from a tight angle. That's the kind of goal most people wouldn't score. Look at Rodri's goals, the Villa game, or even the Inter game. They're good finishes, the high quality finishes, big moments, the insane cross from De Bruyne for Gundogan against Aston Villa as well. There's loads of good moments. Yaya Toure in the FA Cup finals, Aguero just against Liverpool from tight angles and so on. A couple of goals from Liverpool. I can think of quality goals in big games. Leroy Sané racing away against Liverpool, because that's what he needs in big games. And I feel in previous years, we would have scored in this game. Gundogan in the FA Cup final with a volley after 12 seconds. High quality goals. Like, we didn't need to walk the ball into the net previously. We had high quality players stepped up. We don't have that now. They're not doing it. Or we do have it. The confidence is not there, which suggests the mentality is not there. It's an issue that we have to fix. And hopefully Rodri returning and signings and confidence will change that. Because this leads me on to the next point. Haaland's confidence is shot. I've shown a lot of discourse as a line, but even though I slept on it, I still can't get past the fact that I think I was very disappointed and sad to see him pass up that penalty. I saw Alan Shearer talking about it, and he was amazed that Haaland didn't demand that ball and put it in the back of the net for the goal, because that's what killers do, that's what strikers do. And ultimately, we paid £500,000 a week for a guy who's meant to be the most clinical goal scorer in world football, and he often is, and he often has been that guy. Could you imagine Haaland turning down a penalty 3 years ago when he joined? No chance, man. The confidence that Haaland stepped up to the spot to take the penalties when he first joined was ridiculous. Like, look, remember the West Ham one, his first ever ones, where he just raced the ball and smacked it in the bottom corner. Where's that Haaland gone? Now he's ducking a penalty, and he did duck it. I'm sorry, he did. You could say, someone said he's been selfless. Elite level strikers aren't selfless. They want to score goals in the biggest occasions. They want to score goals at Wembley. Haaland once said, I think it was Haaland, something like, if he misses 9 chances, he believes you'll score the 10th. That's not the same Haaland that lined up in the FA Cup final. And I know everyone, has their moments and so on. And I know his confidence is down a little bit. It's normal. But it's not good. It's a bad sign, because I think his form and confidence is dipped and his self-belief has. And that, to me, was not the Haaland Manchester City signed. We signed a guy who was a robot. We acted like a robot. We all joked he was an alien. He looks very human right now, which is fine. But unfortunately, it's not great for City, because Haaland should be scoring in a game like this with a penalty. That's why you pay the big bucks. That's what Cristiano would do. That's what, Messi would do. That's what, Lewandowski would do. That's what, Mbappe would do. These are the people that he's getting compared to. And look, he is that good at times. He's up there with the very best. We know he is. But you got to score your penalties, man. You got to take your chances, and you got to want the chances. I don't think he wanted it, which is, and maybe I'm wrong there. Maybe I'm being a bit harsh, but I was just surprised, and it's very un-Haaland that we signed. It says a lot about where we are. Pep, I love you. Do not take the next few minutes of me talking about Pep as me wanting Pep out. I don't want Pep out, but I do want Pep to have a break. I do want Pep to go and sit on a beach for the next month after the season finishes and do nothing other than drink margaritas, rum and cokes, sex on the beach cocktails, pina coladas, whatever he wants to do. Have a big cigar and relax and not think about football, because this guy is very, 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 very confused. This season has been a very poor one for Pep Guardiola. I love him, but I feel like he's made mistake after mistake after mistake, and ultimately you can turn around and go, what the fuck do you know, Stephen? And you'd be right. Captain hindsight, but you cannot deny it. I've said confusing for a reason, because it's been intensely confusing. I think, to me, tactically, it made an awful lot of sense to go at Palace because they were going to sit back deep, and he predicted they would do that, and he was right, they would do that. It was still a strange selection, and I think there were certain decisions where I'm like, we stumbled on a few times, a few nice patterns of play, and where things have worked a little bit. Yet Guardiola continues to chop and change, and we found a back line that wasn't conceding goals, that was offering threat from both sides and getting forward really nicely with pace and energy. Nico Riley and Núñez. And you know how I feel about Núñez. I think he's been a bit of a waste of money for £50 million as a midfielder. But I admit he's played well at right back. He's been getting better and better. He was working and working and working. He's immediately dropped it and changed it. Immediately brought Akanji back into the side. And I know he likes Akanji, but Núñez was playing well and putting good crosses in, and the energy of the team was balanced. And why change your winning side? And then he did it against Southampton as well, didn't he? Dropped Marmoush and everyone and brought Foden and McAtee back into the side. That's fine if he wants to, but Doku was flying at the time, and he put Nico Riley on the bench at one point and he was flying, and Vardiel was working so well with Diaz, and he changed that to accommodate Kanji again, and you're thinking, why is he doing this? And the Rico Lewis and the McAtee thing I thought was confusing. The Guardiola said he was trying to be fair to the team, and Guardiola has every right to change whoever he wants at any time. I'm not questioning that. He can do what he wants. What I say is irrelevant. What you say is irrelevant. But the patterns are confusing. Rico Lewis is a guy that Guardiola's loved since the treble season, and McAtee talks an awful lot about him. And the reason I'm talking about these two is because they were involved heavily in all the previous rounds. To suddenly just dump Rico Lewis in the stands in particular, who scored in the semi-finals, and put Vitor Reis on the bench, he was never going to get on the pitch, let's be honest. And McAtee for Echeverri, who's never played a minute before, never even been on the bench before, and then to bring him on the final, it's erratic. It's erratic, and it's so un-Guardiola-like. And you could argue, no, Echeverri should be playing. I actually agree, Echeverri should have had minutes beforehand. But to do it in an FA Cup final, to randomly dump two academy players with such a connection to the club that Guardiola's been leaning on for an awful long time now, since January, and Rico Lewis in particular. Rico Lewis did not deserve to not be on the bench there, because they had Kusanov on the bench, and what's Vitor Reis there for? Rico Lewis is such a reliable, intensely likeable player that he's been a teacher's pet for ages. And to dump him in the stands, I thought was a little bit harsh, man, if I'm being honest, And I know they might move on and so on. You could argue that they're not good enough. That's sort of irrelevant to the point, really. The point is, it was unpredictable and erratic. In the same way that Nico Riley and Núñez suddenly being dropped at one point as fullbacks was erratic. In the same way that, we signed Nico Gonzalez and he looked really good and he had a great partnership with Gundogan for a couple of games. And then we stopped doing that and he dumped him in the stands. In the same way that Kusanov had played a month and then he dumped him in the stands. In the same way that, Doku and Savinho were ringers for ages at the start of the season, then disappeared for ages, and then there's just lots of things that have been confusing this year. Like Guardiola occasionally chosen solutions and then just given them up in pursuit of different ideas randomly, unexpectedly, and it's never really worked. And look, I love Pep, I do, but it's been confusing, and if we're confused, the players must be confused, surely. And I hope Pep has a rest and gets round to it. Final thing I want to talk about is, despite all that, I thought Echeverri does clearly look a talent. I think it's wild that Guardiola introduced a young 19-year-old lad in the FA Cup final to try and save the season, so to speak. But Guardiola obviously likes him, and I think that's fair. It does beg the question, where's he been for the past few weeks, And there were rumours that he was impressing in training. Interestingly, it came out in the week of the FA Cup final. That's got to be PR, The fact that Jack Gaughan, a few days before the FA Cup final, did an article saying Echeverri's impressing the training, and then he makes the FA Cup final and makes his debut. It's telling to me that it had to have been leaked. I don't know. But he clearly looks a talent. What I liked about Echeverri was that this was a guy who wanted to get on the ball. I was genuinely disappointed, actually. I think Vardiel, De Bruyne and Akanji, a few times, they just ignored him. He was demanding the ball. He was ahead of them. They just didn't play it to him. I was very disappointed by that. It wasn't assertive behaviour from the team. And when he did get the ball, though, he was bright and aggressive. And of course, he missed the chance. Of course, he's going to miss the chance. It's such a massive moment for such a young lad. And I've seen highlights of even Messi early on, and he missed big chances as a kid because he's a kid. And kids do that. Occasionally the fairy tale story happens, but sometimes the fairy tale story happens and then nothing ever happens after that anyway. The famous one at United was Makeda when he scored, and everyone was like, oh, it's a superstar. And then he was crap and shifted off out of nowhere. there's no correlation between scoring a goal early on as a talent and then becoming a world-class player. It's irrelevant. But what I liked about him was the fact that he showed for the ball. He was aggressive. His movement was positive. He was hungry. He was determined to make an impact. He's clearly got an awful lot of talent. How far he'll go, I don't know. Why it took so long for this to happen, I don't know. Why Guardiola decided the FA Cup final was the best time to introduce him, I don't know. Felt a little bit erratic, a little bit desperate, if I'm being honest. But what I do know is that Echeverri, and maybe Guardiola, if he somehow watches this, look, you're not desperate, man. I know you're not. But it's so Guardiola-like. Like, Pep would never do that in a million years. Pep is one for consistency, and the lack of consistency has been so confusing this season. I don't mind Echeverri being involved. I'm just confused as to why. It's like, oh okay. Where's that come from? You know, like, fair enough. It's confusing. Spare a thought for the players on the bench in the stands. McAtee, Rico Lewis, or Kusanov, who's not played a little bit. These players must be confused. But still, I can't deny he looks a very exciting player, and one that I hope stays around. But I reckon he'll end up going on loan probably still. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see him in the Club World Cup, I'm certain. Hopefully we'll see him against, Bournemouth and Fulham, potentially. If we do, I guess that means McAtee's gone. I think he will be gone, if I'm being honest. Maybe something's changed. I don't know. Maybe Guardiola is just thought, you know what, I'm going to move on, and this is the guy's the future, because he's been doing really well. Bernardo was very positive, but he looks a talent. How far he'll go, I don't know. But he's young. We have to be patient. Guys, there are 5 things that I took from this game. Of course, there's loads more talking points. Let me know in the comments what you took from the game personally. Thank you for watching this, of course, as always. Did a video this morning about 𝙤𝙬𝙨𝙧𝙖𝙬 because there was a little bit of breaking news. It looks like that's going to happen, which is a very exciting signing. And there'll be a match preview later if you're watching this. This is going to be around midday on Monday. Preview for the Bournemouth game later on, probably this evening, probably 8-9 p.m. on Monday or something like that. Thanks for watching this video, guys. Love you all loads. Like, subscribe. Catch you in a bit. Bye-bye.